Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to Ask an Autistic. This is part 2 of our series this week. My name is Jessica Leichtweisz. If you missed part 1, check it out. The recording is right there. Today, we are going to give parents an opportunity to come on and ask autistic adults their questions, or professionals. Sometimes professionals come on here as well. For me, I want to always be a better autism professional. And to me, that means listening to and learning from autistic adults and just providing other people the chance to do the same. We have been a panel of amazing adults. They generously give their time every week to make the world a better place for everyone with autism to live. It's amazing. We sometimes we disagree, we laugh, we butt things out. But I think a lot of progress comes from this. So if you're on live and you want to unmute and ask a question, this is your chance as a parent to unmute and get your question answered.
My question has to do with like activities of daily living. So as you guys know, I have a 4.5, almost 5-year-old son. And I'm finding it challenging to teach him certain, I guess you would call like life skills, like how to bathe himself, how to put on his shorts, we're working on potty training, things like that, like certain things that are very visual and very concrete, like pick up a spoon, scoop the rice, eat the rice. I can show him and it's very easy to teach him. But other things when he can't see what's going on, like bathing yourself, you can't like see everything. You can't, any tips or advice on how to teach those kinds of skills? What have you seen work, and just any advice?
Yeah, those are really good questions. And it's important that we're working on those kind of skills and those natural everyday skills with children with autism as well. So I have my professional perspective, but this is going to be the chance for everyone to share what works for them and what worked for them the most. So Jeff, in terms of learning like everyday living skills, what was the most effective strategy that your therapists and teachers and parents used that helped you?
Well, I will talk about one particular example. When I was in high school, particularly my freshman year, we would be taught like basic jobs, working skills by filling up the vending machines in the hallways, and we would get paid for it by the athletic director. I mean, those are important life skills. Whether it's some of the life skills that I think we could teach our children while they're younger or in school rather include, filling up the vending machines. If schools have vending machines, I know some do and some don't. Or whether, delivering mail to other teachers or the main office, or taking mail from the main office and delivering it to the teachers. Those are really good life skills, because I think, and then there's also the matter of, and because again, these are skills that you're going to have to develop when you enter the workforce. I mean, that's what I did when I was in school, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us have done the same thing. And it's all a matter of, teaching and learning about, managing money. And for example, I don't know if anyone has watched South Park, but the episode where they go, and it's gone. The opening scene of that episode was Stan taking a check from his grandmother and putting it in the bank. So it's important to teach a life lesson about money. Take a check that that the child is planning to buy something with, and just have them open an account and watch that check grow as time goes on. So it's things like that that really involve basic life skills.
Yeah, that's really good advice, Jeff. And like that hands-on learning, like the learning by doing, is often the best thing to do. It's like, rather than just kind of coming up with a list of all the things that you think a child would want to be able to do, and then finding a way to create that in your everyday environment, and bringing your child with you as much as you can and have them participate in as many activities as possible is a really, really good idea. So that's great advice. Kevin, what worked the best for you in terms of teaching adaptive skills and everyday living skills?
All right. Well, I want to start off by just letting Lisa know that something we've already talked about a lot on here is that don't be panicked. You know that he's a little behind in learning these life skills because you know it's been proven, I think, time and again, just because they might learn them they might be a little bit delayed in reaching certain developmental milestones. Usually, I think the success rate and prognosis is pretty good for them reaching them at a reasonable age. You know, I think he should reach a lot of the developmental milestones, and I'm kind of an example of that. I was behind in learning a lot of my developmental milestones. I too was delayed in learning things like dressing, potty training, and all that. I think I was like fully potty trained when I was like 4 or 5, and I was like around that same age when I was able to dress myself for the most part. And I didn't learn to tie my shoes till I was a teenager. I was a teenager before I learned to tie my shoes. And one thing I will admit I never really ended up learning to do was ride a bike, and I never got over my fear of kind of falling. So, but I figure, you know, I learned how to drive a car though, which is more important, I'd say, than learning to ride a bike. So, since that's really because driving is really important for independence when you reach your adult years. So I think I'd rather know how to drive than know how to ride a bike. And as far as what helped, I would say, well, I think, patience, you know, being patient. My parents and teachers were very patient and working on all these skills with me, and didn't get push it too hard on me learning something that I wasn't ready to learn. So I'd say definitely be patient. I received OT therapy in school that I think definitely helped me with fine motor skills and acquiring some of those fine motor skills, and made it possible for me to eventually learn to tie my shoes, even if it was at a later age. And so yeah, patience and therapies and services like PT, OT, I say, generally helped me. But above anything else, patience, yeah.
Yeah, that's really great, Kevin. And you know, when you talked about that patience, it's that balance. So I always tell parents, if you're just doing things for a child they can't do, they're not going to have the opportunity to learn. But then you also don't want to make them feel bad about not being able to do it or set unrealistic expectations. Like I've had parents that will just dress their children and they're 4 or 5 years old, and it's understandable because you have to get out of the house, maybe you're running late for school. But if you're just doing it for the child, you're not giving them a chance to learn how to do it. Now, the converse to that is if you're just like sitting there and saying, you're not going to school until you figure out how to dress yourself. Well, that's also ridiculous because you're going to make the child feel bad. But like creating every opportunity you possibly can to be a learning experience and support them the minimal amount possible. But making sure you're supporting them enough that they feel like they're taken care of and you're not pointing out, because you don't want to harm someone's self-esteem teaching social skills by just like reiterating over and over and over what they are not able to do. But then you also want to make sure that you're not making it so they can't do it by just doing it for them. So there's a balance. I like how you talk about that. Be patient, but also give them as many opportunities to learn as possible.
Yeah, and I would definitely, when I say patience, I agree with the balance side of it. It's like at the same time, while being patient, I say definitely encourage them to, you know, try to do it themselves, as opposed to, learn to do it themselves, as opposed to relying on you to do it for them, every day.
Yeah, that's really great and really important. I think that's very, very valuable. So Monica, do you want to go, we're going a little bit out of order. We usually go last, but do you want to share your opinion? You just were on my list next, or do you prefer to go last? I know you usually close us out.
It's okay for tonight. So I would just like to note, Lisa, that I don't know of a 4-year-old that's completely independently bathing, so don't worry about that so much. And I think that for each of those skills, bathing and feeding and dressing, the tactic that I would take is to teach one step. And when he's mastered one step, then teach a new step. So like start with in the bath. You want him to learn the bath, to bath himself in the places that you don't want anybody else to touch. So start with that. And when he's mastered that and he does it independently with just a verbal, like, wash your butt, if he does it well, independently with just that, then you would teach a new body part. Now we're going to learn to wash this, and the same thing with dressing. So you want him to learn to put on his own underwear first. So you can do, if he's in a good headspace and in it, like giving you like green lights that he wants to learn, then you can do hand over hand. If he's melting down, don't try to do hand over hand. That's not going to get you anywhere. And then from hand over hand, you can move to have him sit on the floor and you put the underwear in front of him and in the right position, and he just has to pull his legs through. And then when you get to a point where you can throw underwear at him and he puts them on, then you would move on to a new clothing item. So the next easiest one would be pants, because it's the same motion as underwear. And socks are the hardest to teach most kids, so do those last, and they don't really matter. A teacher can put socks on them at school, so it's not an issue of his personal well-being if he needs help with socks in grade 3. So I think what Kevin said about be patient is really important. Don't worry about like neurotypical milestones, because maybe he's writing a novel when he's 12, but still needs you to wash his hair. Like, it just doesn't matter. I didn't wash my own hair until well into teenhood. I would bathe myself and then get out of the shower, and my mother would wash my hair in the sink, because I couldn't get it clean, or I couldn't get all the soap out of it. I had really long hair and I didn't want my hair cut. So she would wash my hair in the sink, and that worked and it was fine. Now I wash my own hair minimally. So I think that a key is to be patient and to not overwhelm yourself or Talon, that you want to just teach little chunks. And when he masters a little chunk, teach a new little chunk.
Yeah, that's a great thing. Breaking it into steps is super, super important. So I completely agree with that. So in terms of like, obviously the personal hygiene and personal like privacy parts, that is really good advice. I will just put a disclaimer: if you're a professional, you should not be, unless a parent is present, teaching a child to wash private body parts or touching children's private body parts. And really at a young age, probably should leave that to parents. But that's for parents, that's fantastic.
That answer was
directly at Lisa. And I understand that, but I do get a lot of professionals. I just want to put that disclaimer there. But I can't see, I have like my not showing everyone on the screen today. So I'm assuming one of the cute little kiddos is there now.
Talon, just
All right, perfect. So one of the things, Lisa, we often recommend is using, so when the privacy parts are not an issue, using backwards chaining, meaning let the child do the last step, because then they're always going to be, so breaking it into systematic steps, but let them do the last step. So something simple as like, let's say when he's like brushing his teeth, you would maybe, like, you wouldn't teach him first to open the toothpaste. You would open the toothpaste, put the toothpaste on the toothbrush. You would maybe show him how to brush his top teeth, bottom teeth, and then you have him do the back teeth for the last 30 seconds. That way he's always finishing the activity independently, and you're gradually increasing what he's doing, but you're not adding into it from the front. It's called backwards chaining in terms of behavior science. And that's really effective because children feel like they completed the activity independently, and then they're just doing a little bit more in chunks. So that's a really important way to teach things. So that's very good advice, Monica. Thank you.
Backwards chaining makes a lot of sense for what Jessica just said about it reinforces the end of the activity. So they feel like, yes, I finished the task. But don't discount the the opposite of like, if he's really eager to try, then have him do it at the beginning, and then you're like, okay, my turn, and you finish up. Like there's value on both sides. Just do whatever he's excited for.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Jesse, what is your take on this? What worked for you? So you're living independently on your own. So obviously you have acquired lots of great adaptive skills. You're very successful. You have a job, a car, everything. So how would and a lot of the panelists are, not just that Jesse's the only one that is. But Jesse, so tell us what advice would you give? What worked best for you?
I really do not remember any occupational therapy that taught me life skills. Maybe my mother could interject if I'm not recollecting correctly. But I think that the greatest life skills that I could have been taught were people's intentions. What's the difference between a true friend or someone who's a transient friend or a fair-weathered friend, because I was taken advantage of until the cows came home. Those skills would have been a lot more important for me. But I think that what would have helped as far as life skills is time management. And I was not taught a lot of those skills. I just got snide remarks on my second grade report card. It's crazy how things haunt us that happened so long ago. But I remember seeing on the report card when I was probably 7 years old, does not use time wisely. And to some extent, that's not completely been solved. Therefore, a good skill that could have been taught to me is taking one step at a time. I want to get my list. I have a to-do list right here. I want to show you something. This is my completed to-do list. And it was completed by putting only one thing at a time instead of a whole list that has yet to be crossed off. So my mind is focused on just one thing, and I cannot move on until that one thing that's uncrossed is crossed off finally. And early is on time is late, and late is never. That also be a good skill, because a lot of children, they have trouble with executive functioning and understanding, okay, now it's time to go to the bathroom and put toothpaste on my toothbrush and so forth.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Good advice, Jesse. So it's important to teach time management, and lists do work really well. It's really concrete. It works well and I have lists, like I constantly have lists too that I'm using. It works really well for me. This is like my incessant list. Lists are a really good, good strategy for children, because it's both kinesthetic, like when you cross something off of a to-do list, neurologically in your brain, you release dopamine, and it actually makes you feel good. So it's actually naturally reinforcing for anyone, adults and children alike. And also just very concrete. It's visual. And if you forget, then a lot of times children, specifically with autism, have issues with planning and organization and recall. That's something that not everyone, but some children with autism struggle with, or really everyone can struggle with. But for kids with autism, it's a little harder than it is for typical kids. And so that's a really good tool and strategy. Thank you, Jesse.
You're very welcome.
Michelle, I think you are the last panelist tonight. You will end us out. Normally Michelle starts, so I think this is the time you're closing us off. But close us out tonight and tell us what worked best for you in teaching you to adaptive skills.
There's other things that in my earlier days that I struggled with, like potty training was one of them. Another thing, I had trouble chewing. That was another thing that I haven't really told too much about that, but it's just that during my early intervention services that I got, I had I believe it was the occupational therapist that had to actually do a hand on hand to teach my mouth muscles just to be able to chew, because that I used to just swallow everything. So that was also another thing. And just like what we've been saying, any hygiene skills, and with just by getting dressed and stuff, or any other life skills like brushing your teeth, or even like Jesse was saying about with just that's also just as important as you get older with like management and stuff in an organization, that, you know, what works for me, I'm more visual. I would have something like an object or like whatever, like a visual like schedule that's like tells step by step. Like I know in the classroom that I work in, we have by our hand washing station, that for the students to learn to brush their teeth, that they have a visual like strip that's hung up right by the sink, so that way it would have step by step of what they have to do, like a picture and stuff, and that way it shows like, and we would use like depending on the child, it would be using like a different various like prompting system, like hand over hand or like gestural or the least independent, I mean the least like dependent, which would be like verbal really. So and like what Jessica, we were saying about with backwards chaining, like yeah, when you do it, like when you do the last step, it can feel like you achieved something and everything. And like Monica, like you were saying, it can backfire a little bit in terms about like if the student like realizes that like, wait a minute, I'm not done yet. I'm not done learning this skill yet. So like in a way, that's where it can backfire in a way. So it's like it does depend on like the type of skill that you're teaching with. So like, and also depends on like any child like developmental milestone, because anyone will eventually get to their most potential, like most independent, and that's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does vary per child and per things. And teaching using visual schedules, I actually forgot to. It's actually the number one strategy, and I didn't even talk about it. Thank you for bringing that up. You have visual schedules, where just like Jessie talks about, you have your intent, like your list. I call them intentions, and rather than to-do lists. To do is overwhelming to me, but what I intend to do, and then you're crossing that off. Having like a visual representation of the steps of an activity is actually really powerful and really important as well. So thank you. Lisa, I hope that helped you, got your question answered. Thank you so much for jumping on. So we're gonna end the call for tonight, but this has been another episode of Ask an Autistic, where every week parents, professionals can come on, learn directly from autistic adults. If you want to join, head over to my website, hopeeducationservices.com, and you can register under the events. You'll get the link, and then we'll see you live next week. So thank you everyone who either was here live or watched us in recording. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next week.